So there is no mismatch. Again, I'm saying I am not an expert of fear. And my mota is he's technically right. And he should in follow best industry practice. Because this discussion is a client itself को थोड़ा doubt रहता है.
A very good afternoon to all. This is Jatin Luthra from the Office of GSCA School of Excellence. Would like to welcome you all to the introduction session of physical security and life safety. This introduction session is about highlighting the key areas of fire and life management at a facility, crisis and disaster management planning, physical security planning for a facility, and physical security framework implementation at a facility. Okay, so you all must be wondering that why we named this introduction session. As you all know, School of Excellence is a platform which provides certification courses to our valued members. And we are coming up with our next training in April on physical security and life safety. And today's session is all about realizing the importance of this training in our corporate service domain. It is my pleasure to introduce Major Ranjeet Sinha and Rahul Sharma from MidCat, who will be taking this session and share more insights on the importance of this learning. I would also like to thank Ms. Jaya Srivastava, who is passionately leading the School of Excellence and introducing various programs for learning and upskilling knowledge of our fraternity members. So far, we have covered 33 different courses and more than 800 professionals across India have benefited from these trainings. On that note, I would like to again thank everyone for your support. And now I'll request Major Ranjeet Sinha to take it further, please. Over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Jatin, for that lovely introduction. And thank you for giving us this opportunity to be able to be here on this platform and be able to conduct this session. Thank you, GSCS, the School of Excellence, and Jaya ma'am, of course, for providing this opportunity. And a warm welcome to everyone who is there in the session today on behalf of me and my colleague, Rahul. And like Jatin mentioned, this is going to be an introductory session about what is going to form part of this module that we are calling as physical security and life safety module. Right. So we have 4 different sessions planned for this. Keeping in mind that all of you are professionals who are dealing with physical security, life safety, administrative work in your day-to-day operations. We'll keep it more experiential, wherein we'll share a lot of experiences that you have and we have, and then we'll try to slot everything in a framework wherein we benefit out of these 4 sessions that we will be attending. I will quickly start presenting my screen, and then we will move ahead with the training that we have planned for today. So are you able to see my screen? Can someone just confirm?
Yes, we are.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, so like I said, this entire module is about physical security and life safety. And for today, what we'll quickly try and cover is, I'll tell you about, a little about both the facilitators, that is me and my colleague Rahul. I'll tell you about the topics that we are going to be covering, and among various sessions, the 4 sessions that we have planned. We'll discuss a little about the takeaways that you will have from these sessions. We'll discuss a little bit about the interactions, how we'll go about doing it during these sessions. And of course, at the end of the session today, you can have your questions and any expectations that you may have. Right. So quickly, just to brief you, my name is Ranjeet. I have served in the Army for 11 years. And post coming out of the Army, I took a PMR in 2008. I have primarily been working in risk consultancy domain. I have worked with Mahindra Special Services Group for 6 years. And then I was with PricewaterhouseCoopers for 6 years with the strategic threat advisory practice and the government advisory practice. I have worked a lot in terms of safe city, smart city designs, various frameworks, the security frameworks, the risk mitigation frameworks, manufacturing units, and across a lot of domains, both in India and outside. I've also designed and managed a lot of crisis management or crisis response plans, as well as actual execution on ground. Right. And I've also conducted a lot of trainings across the domain, both from physical security perspective as well as crisis management. And I also have with me my colleague Rahul, who will be dealing more from the fire and life safety perspective. He's again a veteran from the armed forces. He's an ex-Navy person. He has more than 20 years of experience in various assignments related to physical security, right? And he is also a certificate holder in safety from NEBOSH. He's again conducted multiple trainings and fire safety exercises across multiple domains for various clients. He's also a specialist in the NBC warfare and damage control. So he'll be taking care of the fire safety, life safety aspects, and the crisis management aspects of these sessions, right? So moving ahead, we are going to be conducting a total of 4 sessions in these modules, like Jatin mentioned earlier. The sessions primarily relate to the physical security aspect, divided again in two. One is regarding the planning part of it, and second is the implementation, the framework. How do you implement that plan actually at a facility? So that's more operational related. And then, of course, we'll be looking at the fire and life safety management at a facility, something that you all would keep experiencing day in, day out. And then last but not the least would be crisis and disaster management planning aspects of it. And also we'll touch a little upon how do you go about actually planning for implementation and also preparing for implementation. So these will be primarily the 4 sessions that we will be talking about, right? As I go ahead, and Jatin also would have put in the session for today, now you can keep putting it any questions that you may have, plus any expectations from any of these 4 sessions that you may have, right? So that we are generally aligned on the same page. And if there are any questions, I can answer that. And if there are any expectations, we will include it in these sessions if we have not yet included. So we have tried to include whatever generally is conducted or generally is part of these trainings that is there. However, if it is not done, we will do that. So do put that in the chat that is there. Right. Coming on to the session 1 part, where we'll be talking about primarily the physical security planning for a facility. Now, the facility can be of any type, various types of facilities that you all would be operating from, and every facility, I understand, has a peculiar or can have various unique requirements. So how do we go about transposing that basic framework, basic plan? How do we go about putting it in place for any particular facility is something that we will be discussing in this session. Primarily, what we'll be covering is what exactly is physical security. When we say physical security, everybody understands, there is a guard, there is some camera that is placed, there is a process. But is it only that? Is that only when we say physical security, or there is more to it, right? Are we beyond that? Are we the first responders? Are we the brand ambassadors? So is it something more than that? We'll be talking about that. We'll talk about various risk assessment methodologies, right? Because as all of you understand, I'm sure risk assessment forms the bedrock of any correct and robust physical security framework that is deployed. If you don't do a proper risk assessment, your security plan will never be proper. So then we will see as to what are the various methodologies, accepted ones, and then how do we go about doing it. We'll touch that in brief. We will see how to identify what is to be protected. What are those critical assets? How do we arrive at those critical assets? How do we identify that, yes, these are the critical assets that we need to protect? What are the various parameters that we look at it? And then we go about how do we go about protecting it? We'll see what are those various principles, right, and basic frameworks of physical security that is followed. And the aim is to keep it simple, however, cover everything that needs to be taken care of, everything that needs to get protected. So we'll see things about that. Then we'll see how do we go about planning to protect, right? When we talk about people, process, infrastructure, technology, how do they integrate? How do we dovetail them in the overall security plan? How do we go about making our contingency plans? How do we go about making our crisis plans? Right? Generally, when we say, okay, we have a routine operation and we have an incident management or a crisis management operation, there is a third aspect also which we talk about, or which we should talk about, but generally we forget. That's the contingency planning. What happens if there is a crisis and your half the things are non-functional or things have gone out of operation? How do you try and ensure that you get back to business as usual as soon as possible? Maybe a little bit of business continuity, but yes, that is something that is again important and critical. And then of course we'll be looking at certain important standards, guidelines which can help us do this planning, right? Okay, so just to give you a snapshot, what we'll be talking about, like I said, is physical security only protection of people, assets, information, or there is much more to it? What all does it involve? When we talk about various layers, what are those, you know, alignment that we carry out? How do we go about deploying our controls? How do we go about thinking about this? When we say, it has to be in layers, it has to follow certain principles. How do we go about doing that? So we'll cover all this in detail when we are going on to these sessions and more, right? We'll be talking in detail about risk assessment. Now, risk assessment, if you just take it in a simple manner, is a function of two most important things, which are likelihood of an incident occurring and what is going to be the impact. Now, both of this should not be dependent on a person, right, or a team which is doing it. There has to be a certain set standards based on which this gets carried out, so that even if you are doing it over a period of time, there is no variation in the results which come out. So we'll see what are those various standard frameworks or good practices that we follow, how impact is measured, how do we go about measuring the likelihood in brief. So we'll cover that. We'll see how do we go about identifying importance of assets, how critical assets are identified, their valuation is carried out. How do we go about identifying and rating the threats? How do we go about identifying and rating the vulnerabilities that are there, or the loopholes in the system? And then arrive at a matrix which gives us, or the risk matrix, which gives us alignment between impact and likelihood, so that we know what to take care of first. The aim is always to bring the high risks to medium or low, bring the medium risks to low, and keep monitoring those low risks so that they do not increase. And again, the matrices can be n number. It can be a 3 by 3, 4 by 4, 3 by 4, 5 by 5, anything that the organization or the team has decided on. So we'll discuss on this, right? We'll be talking about various principles for solution design, right? We have seen as to how that entire flow goes from outward inward when you're talking. So we'll be talking about deterrence, we'll be talking about delay, we'll be talking about detections. How do we go about implementing it actually on ground? What are the various methods to do it, and how does it actually come back, give us the feeds? We'll be talking about assessing, because what happens is many a times when we are designing our system, we get an alert, we plan it in a manner that the moment you get an alert or you detect something, you respond. Now, understanding that our response capabilities are limited, and if we keep responding to false alerts, after a point of time, both the system and the men or the people who are there, I'll not just say men today, but the entire security functionaries who are there, they start having doubts in themselves and the system. How do we assess that an alert is genuine before responding to that is something that is very, very critical and important today, right? And then, of course, we go about responding. And then there's, of course, recovery, but it comes more into the business continuity aspects that is there, right? So this is just a snapshot of what we, certain aspects that we'll be covering in the session one, and of course there'll be loads of it. We'll be doing a lot of case studies on this. We'll be talking about various experiences, our experiences, your experiences, and then about various facilities also. Session two will be primarily on how we go about implementing this framework at a facility, right? So now that we will be looking at various sectoral specific planning that we have carried out, we will see how do we go about implementing it, because making a plan is one aspect of it, implementing it properly is another aspect of it, which is very, very critical, right? Your plan has to be good, proper, then only your implementation will work. But if your implementation is not as per expectation, however good you may plan, your security framework will not be robust, it will not work. So again, there is a correlation between both of them, right? So again, so this is something that we'll be talking about. We'll be talking about how you arrive at the policy, your processes, how do you go about implementing it, how do you go about integrating various controls. Now see, physical security in isolation cannot work. When you are in a facility, you also understand that many a times there are a lot of other systems that will get integrated with physical security. Visitor management हो सकता है, HR का हो सकता है, attendance का हो सकता है, canteen का हो सकता है, right? Material management हो सकता है. There can be a lot of it which can get integrated. So what are these various factors which can get integrated? Because when they get integrated, then only you can have a holistic complete system पूरा तभी बन पाएगा जब ये सारा integrated है, right? We'll be talking about various technologies that are there, how what can be the various guidelines when you're implementing these technologies, क्या ध्यान में रखना चाहिए इन technologies को implement करते समय. Many a times we talk about state of the art system, सबसे बढ़िया, industry best in class. लेकिन क्या वो बेस्ट इन क्लास, बेस्ट इन इंडस्ट्री, इज इट गुड फॉर आवर फैसिलिटी? क्या हमारे फैसिलिटी के लिए वो बढ़िया है? दैट इज समथिंग दैट वी हैव टू कीप इन माइंड, बिकॉज व्हाट इज गुड फॉर आवर फैसिलिटी will work the best. So that is something that needs to be kept in mind. People aspects, right? Suddenly you go about making a lot of changes, the people, the employees, the vendors, A may not take kindly to it, B they may not be able to sustain that. So क्या चेंज मैनेजमेंट कैसे करना है, कैसे लोगों को समझाना है, किस तरीके से आगे की कार्रवाई करनी है, दैट्स आल्सो समथिंग दैट वी विल टच अपॉन. Another aspect would be maintenance of equipment that we'll touch upon, because what happens is today we have seen at most of the places, I'll not say most, but a lot of places where you buy very good equipment, but the maintenance aspect of it is not taken care of, because of which what happens is that your system starts malfunctioning after a point of time. The calibration goes for a toss, वो ठीक calibration नहीं होता, वो आपको false alerts देता रहता है. You say, yeah, system is not proper, let's shut it off. And a good system, because it was not maintained or calibrated properly, we are not using it, so we are not getting benefits out of that, right? So that's something that needs to be taken care of. And of course, lastly, when you have all the framework that you have deployed, is your framework good enough? So how do you go about testing it? Test कैसे करेंगे हम उसको? अभी रियल लाइफ सिचुएशन हमेशा तो हो नहीं सकता, या रियल लाइफ सिचुएशन के पहले हमें टेस्ट करना है. सो हाउ डू वी गो अबाउट डूइंग tabletop exercises, mock drills, rehearsals? What are the various aspects to keep in mind? That is something that we will be talking about in detail in this session, right? Okay, certain things that we will be covering. We'll be talking about the structure of implementation plan, which will have your governance, which will include, like I said, policy, your management chain, your KPIs, क्या है security standards, क्या क्या इस्तेमाल कर रहे हैं. It will encompass your people, which will be your roles and responsibilities, your contracts, SLAs. This again something very, very important. What are the various interdependencies, both internal and external, right? Your external resources which are there, your internal staff which is there. How do you go about doing contract management? कैसे करते हैं? How should you manage this contract? We'll be talking about technology, which will have your security systems. It will have your equipment maintenance, access, CCTV, and any other equipment that is there. Access CCTV generally primarily forms the base at most of the facilities, right? Then, of course, the AMCs, the SLAs, the annual maintenance contracts, the service level agreements that is there, right? So we'll talk about that. We'll also be talking about the processes, one of the most important aspect of it, right? So it will be your daily processes, your guard processes, your access management, incident management processes, right? Your material, vendor, visitor, anything and everything. That's something. How do you go about implementing is what we will be talking about. Sara discuss karenge hum. We'll see what will be the effective operational management, including your security operations center, right? What all should the security be capable of, and how should they go about doing it? How should they be able to provide support to the employees, right? How should a command center be operating that it provides support to employees 24/7, right? And also, what are the various capability enhancements that requires to be done, not just for the not just for yourself, but also the entire security staff that is there, right? So that we will be discussing. We'll be discussing, like I said, about various technologies. Of course, there are certain technologies which are deployed अभी and new technologies which are coming in. लेकिन इन सब में एक चीज हम भूल जाते हैं, जो करंट टेक्नोलॉजी है हमारे पास उसका अच्छा इस्तेमाल, maximizing the use of technology which is available to us. That is something that we will talk about. That's something that's very important, because if we don't do that, we will not be able to understand technology. We will not even be able to upgrade. So that is something that we will be discussing about, right? We'll be talking about some we'll see certain videos, identify as to what various technologies can be there. One aspect is of having that technology. Second is, how do we utilize that technology? How are we utilizing that technology? That is something going to be very important. We'll also touch upon the system capability management. Now, see, today, various security technology systems which are there can be of various categories. एक पूरा manual हो सकता है. There can be semi-automated system where you have to say access and CCTV which are connected. You can also have systems which have all the systems connected, right? Your access, CCTV, lighting, communication, your barriers, right? Your intrusion detection, everything is connected and it is giving you a complete picture rather than just one or two alerts. So how do we go about managing that system? How do we go about making the best use of the entire integration that has been carried out? That is something that we will be also discussing in this, right? So all this is what we'll be talking about in the implementation aspects. Session 3 will be related to your fire and life safety management at a facility. Again, this will be more focused towards the fire and life safety aspects of it. We'll be talking about basics of fire, what is fire, what are the various fire hazards, how do we go about preventing and protecting from fires, what are the various systems, good practices which are available, what are the various extinguishing methodologies that we have, what are the best practices for evacuation, how should you plan your evacuation, single way, two way, how do you have your assembly areas, right? Can the assembly areas be same for all the evacuation? If it is an earthquake based evacuation, if it's a fire based evacuation, should it be the same? If yes, why? If no, why not? What are the advantages, disadvantages? Why should we go on a separate one? We'll be talking about standards and guidelines which govern this, especially in terms of your buildings, etc. And then we'll be also talking about certain basics of first aid in this, right? So we'll be talking about some common fire hazards which are there in the buildings, how they go. So some of this and many more, we'll be talking about various case studies, how it happened, what was wrong, what was identified as something that was not there, क्या क्या गलत हुआ, क्या उसको सही कर सकते थे, right? We'll be talking about basics, various fire extinguishers. Today, we have seen that generally many people, I'll not say most, many people are not exactly aware as to what type of cylinders are available and what is the type that they can use in most situations, right? So generally, so ceasefire hai, we can use it anywhere. Everything cannot be used everywhere. So those kind of things need to sort of get structured at some point of time, some places. So we'll see all these in detail, where what can be used. We'll talk about various details in terms of evacuation, right? What is to be done, various good practices, what need not be done, what should not be done, right? And various other aspects that I had covered when we were talking about the overall plan for this, right? Then would be the session 4, right? Session 4 would be primarily, having seen the physical security aspects, having seen the risks, having seen the implementation, having seen the fire safety and all, then we'll be primarily talking about the crisis and disaster management planning, how that entire framework is planned, right? And then how do you set it in motion, right? So various aspects that we'll cover in this will be your terms and definitions. How does a crisis management life cycle take place? What all are the ingredients? What all is supposed to be taken care of, right? What are the various common risks and how do you go about identifying them? How can you find out that yes, this probably ये गड़बड़ हो रहा है जो कि आगे जाकर के ऐसा हो सकता है, बड़ा बन सकता है और मेरे लिए खतरा पैदा हो सकता है, फैसिलिटी के लिए खतरा हो सकता है. How do you go about identifying those, right? How do you go about preparing for situations? How do you do your response plan? How do you go about doing your response management, at least up till the kickoff of the plan? So that is important. And then we'll also be touching upon the crisis communication, which is one of the most important aspects of crisis and disaster management, right? If you are able to clearly communicate as to what is happening, what is required to be done, what are you doing, and what is expected, that is very, very important. Otherwise, most of the times क्राइसिस का रिस्पॉन्स फेल हो जाता है अगर कम्युनिकेशन सही नहीं है, right? So we'll be talking about, like I said, terms, definitions. So starting from an event going up till a disaster, how does it escalate? What are the various things that you should be looking at? We'll check that. We'll see how do you go about doing incident management, right? So how do you go about gathering information? How do you go about making quick decisions? The requirement to coordinate the actions, how to preempt. No, you can't keep always waiting कि अब ये होगा तब मैं उसको बताऊंगा. क्या हम पहले बता सकते हैं कि ऐसा हो रहा है, ऐसा हो सकता है, wherein I may need you? So how do you identify that? Okay, this is probably now I should be looking at informing this person. He may need to get involved at a later stage. So that is something that we'll look at. Providing information, how do you go about doing it? Coordination. As security functionaries, we need to be coordinating a lot of activities. So how do you go about coordinating all this? And then, of course, documenting the steps taken. That's something that is very, very important, right? Not only to understand as to what happened, but also how it happened and what all worked, what didn't work. Your entire analysis will be based on this, right? So that is something that we'll talk about. We'll talk about the various processes, so how you go about assimilating the information, analysis of the information, right? Evaluating various courses of action as to what are you supposed to do in this particular situation when the situation is evolving, right? Selecting the best course of action and then actually doing it, taking care of it, right? Communication, how do you go about communicating, doing those kind of things? How do you go about reporting and logging of activities? How do you track the incident, right? And then, of course, do a RCA, the root cause analysis, and then put it in the get the lessons out and also put it in the plan going ahead, so that you don't need to again think back, but you have already put that yes, if something like this happens, this is what I need to do in case it is required, right? So these are the various aspects that we will be covering in this, right? So these are the things that we'll be covering in those 4 sessions. If there are any other expectations, do put it down so that we know, either if we are not covering it, we would surely include that, right? Certain other aspects to keep in mind, what you go back, what you actually learn or refresh, if I can say, out of these 4 sessions, right, is of course understanding of various terminologies. See what happens, we do a lot of work as normal security functionaries, we are doing a lot of work on ground, but many a times we are not able to categorize it or bucketize it under those critical terms which are there, right? People talk about deterrence, defense, denial, failed to secure and fail to safe and a lot of things. So let's go about understanding the terms. That will sort of be good, so that you will understand as to if the activity that you're doing, what is it about, right? We'll also be looking at identification and preparing for various risks. How do you go about identifying those risks using those risk assessment methodologies? Primarily, we'll be talking about convergence of security, safety, and crisis management. That's something that you will be, that will be a good takeaway, because वो अलग-अलग नहीं रहते, right? If you look at it holistically, they are not separate. You are not dealing with it separately, right? You are dealing with it together. So what is the convergence, right? We'll be looking at various case studies and practical lessons based on that, the experience. And of course, we'll be telling you about various guidelines and standards which generally get utilized and are good for us to know when we are talking about these security, safety, and crisis management aspects of it, right? So these will be certain takeaways that you'll have from the training, right? What we would expect once you are there in the session, some expectations from our side. I'm sure you'll have a lot of expectations from your side, but certain expectations from our side. Be on time, be on mute if you are not talking, unless you want to ask a question or share your experience. Don't use telephone in between, especially when you're not mute. I understand that, even though it will be weekends, but being the kind of in the kind of job that you are in, you may get calls, there might be emergencies. Go on mute, uh, inform if you need to move out, raise hand, participate, share experiences. See, there would be a lot of experiences that you would have undergone, right? Do share experiences, share learnings. It is good, it will help everybody to gain something out of that, right? Put in your questions in the QA box or the chat box as you will be advised, or you can unmute and ask as it will be there, right? We would look for a lot of interactions, right? Whether in the verbal form or typing form, whatever is possible. So do respond. I mean, all of you are coming with some experience. कुछ नहीं, एक दिन का भी तो experience है. You have stood your ground, right? You've been there, or you want to make a career in this, right? There is no right or wrong. Trust me, in security and safety, there is no right or wrong. Any situation can develop into a different situation based on any response that has happened. So don't worry on that count. We are all professionals. Feel free to talk, feel free to share, feel free to respond. Do interact, it'll help. It'll help everybody to learn, right? So these are certain aspects that we would want you to keep in mind when we are going through the sessions. Right now, I am done and happy to take on whatever questions that you may have and any expectations also that you may have from the session. Jatin, thank you so much, and over to you for this.
Okay.
I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you so much, Major Ranjeet. I think this is very well explained, and the benefits which has been talked about, I'm sure people would definitely like to get themselves enrolled and get to learn such important, the critical elements which are there in it. I could see that we have people who wanted to ask questions. In fact, they're asking that when we can start asking questions. I've already told them you can drop the queries there. I'm just waiting for it to come up. So nothing that I see as of now. So we're just waiting for it. Maybe in the meanwhile, is there anything else that you wanted to probably put in there? I'll just drop the.
Sure. Anything you want to ask, Jatin?
No, I think see, one thing which we've seen in the trainings, in the School of Excellence trainings, that we always see is that people often ask this thing that when so what exactly is it really going to help me, or the content of the training, is it specific to the industry, or to the areas or something, or is it like generic? So for example, if a person who is working in a ITS organization, probably for them the content is it similar to what for a person who is maybe working in a manufacturing industry?
Right. Okay. And I think that's a very good and a genuine question, whether the requirement or the content is same or different. Now see, if you see the basic requirement is the same, is to protect people, assets that you have. Right. However, how we go about implementing it, how we go about planning for it, how do we go about structuring it, it is different. You cannot equate a facility, a ITS facility or a bank to a automobile manufacturing unit or a hazardous chemical manufacturing unit. So it will be different. What we will try and cover here is I will try and give you inputs about all these, right? And that's where when I'm saying is that I would want you all to interact. See, what happens is uh, I have I have done a lot of work for ITS. I have done a lot of work for bank. Me, Rahul, both, right? We have done for oil and gas, manufacturing units, automobile. I will share what I know, what I which keeps coming relevant. Of course, I can't be going very sector specific because you all are very widespread from domains, and we will not have that much of time, right? So, but I want you to ask if you think that there is something specific that needs to get answered. Please feel free to ask, right? I will surely try to get you an answer for that. Uh, Keep it so that when if I'm telling you something, I'll try and keep it I'll segregate it for ITS, manufacturing, static things, something that is highly vulnerable, right? But in case there is something that is not getting covered or there is something more that you want to understand, please feel free to ask. That's what we look at, and I'll get you an answer for that.
Great. So another question which came in my mind is uh, I think we got a question
Sure.
here also in the chapter. So says that do we have anything in, artificial intelligence based on person behavior and facial expression?
AI-based behavioral monitoring is something that is in progress, right? That is an upcoming technology. We will have one of the aspects will be on an upcoming technology that we'll be talking about. And we will have these various AI, AI aspects, AI ML. How do we go about training it? What is it that we as security professionals can expect going ahead from these? Second is behavioral aspects. There is a lot of studies going on this, and there are certain claims that have also been made that you can identify if a person is in panic, you can identify as a person is agitated, you can identify as if a person is terrified or a person is going to be doing something. It's got a lot of adrenaline rush. Yes, it is all in progress at various levels of maturity across the technologies, right? So we will discuss that. We will talk about it. We will do that. But yes, behavioral, I'll say AI based behavioral analytics. Behavioral analytics are in place. AI based behavioral analytics, it is reaching certain level of maturity, and we will discuss about that.
Great. I think so. Got another question there, and so it is like more like people, because it came to physical security, and the life safety there. So people have been asking questions related to their domain now. So we have one which says that we have a bunker room attached to doctor's room. So can you please discuss a bunker usage policy for sick employees, long hours working employees, or earlier arriving employees, etc. So I mean these are some very very relevant questions that I see it's coming in here, and I this may probably be not the right place for a right forum to answer it. Though I would
Yeah.
definitely want you to give an answer. However, I think that's where we wanted people to understand that why we are doing these sessions and why the training is so important for people. Because there are different vertical, there are different areas wherein people have different challenges, and there are some common things which have to be practiced in whatever you know in whatever scenario you are in. So that is something which all people need to learn. However, yes, over to you, please. Would you like to say something on that?
Yeah. So this is we are talking about that room which is there on the side, right? So
Yeah.
we will discuss it in detail. I think Rahul would love to do that in detail, like you said. So once we are there in the session, because it requires a lot of connecting aspects to it. So yes, we will cover that in the session.
Okay. So
Okay.
to Mr. Sham Kumar Kamble, so to answer you, yes, uh, you have a pretty right concern there, and we're going to talk about all these scenarios and situations in those trainings that we're going to cover there. So you can definitely reach out, and we will definitely there to help you. So, Major, is there any set standard for risk assessment?
For risk, okay. So what happens? Risk assessment, there are various frameworks that are there, right? Risk assessment methodologies. So there is one framework which is most commonly used is the risk management framework, ISO 31000, wherein it has various sub frameworks, the 31010 and various other aspects of it. So one part of it, basically it talks about the enterprise risk management, and one aspect of it is identification of risks. Now it's not primarily related to, or rather I'll say dedicated to, physical security. However, that is what is utilized when we are plotting likelihood and impact. And then there are so there is a methodology again to arrive at that. Then there are various other methodologies also which are there. So you have your API 780, which is primarily related to your petroleum industry, the American Petroleum Institute standard, which is there of for risk assessment. Now that's a very specific one, though it generally follows similar parameters. You have a risk assessment methodology for buildings against terrorism, that is by FEMA, that is Federal Emergency Management Agency of US. So that is one of this. There is something called a Carver methodology. Now, Carver is something that came out from the defense forces. It uses a different perspective. So like generally what we see when we are doing a risk assessment, we are assessing as to what is it that we need to protect and how we, what is the weakness in that. Carver actually looks from the enemy side, right? And as to what is it that I can quickly get, right? So of course we turn it around and we again put it in our aspect as to how we can go about doing it. And then there are other methodologies also which can be utilized. However, the important aspects are the basic, parameters generally remain your asset, right? How important that critical that asset is to you. What is the threat in the environment, right? This threat will also again take into account the capability of perpetrator, the intent of perpetrator, what he can do, what he cannot do. Asset will look at a lot of things. Does it have a backup? What are the kind of people who are going to be there? How critical is it to your business? And then of course there is vulnerability, right? So vulnerability again, and all this gives out your either they can be standalone or they can combine and give you the likelihood of an event occurring. And then there is your impact, right? Your impact again is decided by the organization as to now impact can be in terms of financial loss of life, reputation, legal, a lot of other activities that can be there, gets gradually impacted. And that's how then you arrive at your overall figure of risk as to when you combine this. Yes. So there are various methodologies. There are things which have been given out by ACES. So there are various methodologies. We'll be looking at quite a few of them. in the training session?
Great. So I think it's quite vast, and that is why we have these trainings which are coming up, so that people can get a complete knowledge about it. So I hope because we have the name that says "Stay Alert and Safe," which is a person who's joined there, and so to Mr. Stay Alert and Safe, I hope we are able to answer it. But yes, you need to get yourself enrolled in the training programs, and we'll be able to help you out more in that. We also have it's Droiden Pereira, and he's also probably been an impression of some kind of a knowledge workshop that we're doing. So he put in the question accordingly. However, so I'll try and answer it there. So he's basically asking him that since this session is about lift safety, so is there a requirement for acquiring Form 11 for scaffolding, and up to what minimum height needed for commercial property? So Mr. Jordan, so I'll maybe you join in between. So this is an introductory session for one of the trainings that we're going to conduct. It's a certification course that we are providing to our members, all the GSES members, which is in the month of April, starting from 2nd. I'll talk about that in detail in my coming slide. So this is the introductory session to let people know the importance of this training and what are the basic elements that we're going to cover in the training. You will definitely get your answers there in the training. We would love you to be there and get yourself enrolled, and we'll be able to help you out with the answers. So, Major, my question to you is that, who are the people that who should enroll for these trainings? From which domain? I mean, is it only for the professionals who are into security, or is it to the different domains as well? So I think it is very important for our members to know that it is not only limited to the security, which I know to my knowledge, but I would definitely like you to say something on that.
Absolutely, Jatin, like you said very correctly. Though, if you look at it, if you look at the topics, they seem very related to physical security and safety kind of sessions. However, physical security, safety, crisis management, it's not something that is just related to one security domain, physical security domain, right? It's any professional worth his salt, any professional person who's there in facility management, who's there in operations, right, should know about this, should know about the safety aspects of it, should know about the basic first aid, should know about the crisis management as to what is it that they should be looking at, right? Now, I mean, when you say, for example, you enter into a building or you enter into a conference room, do you look at those 2-3 important aspects? Aap yahan par hain, where am I? Where is the exit? Those so it is something that has to get ingrained. So it is not just related to physical security professionals, but this is something that is recommended for everybody across and all professionals who are there.
Okay, so I think that would also answer, and I would like to say yes on your behalf there. So we've got a question which says that are you going to focus on business continuity in this session? So I think yes, definitely that is also one of the focus areas and as part of the business continuity which is there. So Mr. Koshal Chaudhary, yes, focusing on business continuity is part of the session as well there. And again, we've got questions which are more, relevant to one particular scenarios that are there. So to everyone, to all the joiners, we would be covering all these scenarios and everything in the training that which we are going to provide. It is very important for you to understand that why we are offering these courses, and that is what this session is all about today. All your concerns, all your queries, and if you have any other, if you wanted to grab more knowledge about it, you need to understand that how things work in your office premises. So please get yourself enrolled and get these trainings done. which will definitely help you out. One last question, Major, which is, for people who have spent some years in the FM industry, how will these trainings help, and how important are refresher trainings given the constant changes, challenges, and disruptions?
Great. I think it's a very good question who has asked, and I must commend sir for asking this, because there is some aspect of the answer also included in the question. So like the second part of it, which talks about the refresher. I do understand that, yes, having spent a lot of time, we do understand as to the basics of what is there. However, things are evolving, the risks are changing, the technology is changing, the manpower that is coming to us is also changing, right? So a lot of things are dynamic, a lot of things are moving. We need to refresh and we need to upgrade. So when we are talking in this session, we are trying to keep the levels for everybody. There will be something for everybody in these sessions. So there will be something for people with who have sort of started their careers in this. There would be things for people who are there, who have spent some time in this field, and they are looking at growing in this. There would also be enough content for people who have been there in this field for long. They are looking at getting into the leaderships or are at leadership role. They are more at the strategy level, at the planning part. So we will be there will be content for every level that you will get, sir.
Great. So on that note, I would like to just quickly tell my audience that these trainings that we're talking about is going to start from 2nd of April is the first session, and the second session is on 3rd, and then 9th and 10th of April. These are the weekends session which will be conducted on Saturday and Sunday morning between 9 and 11 a.m. You can get yourself enrolled by visiting the website, which is the www.gscs/soe.world. We'll also be sharing the link, the registration link, in the chat box and across all our members today itself, and you can get yourself enrolled. Once again, as you all can see, that these are the key takeaways and the key points that we're going to cover during this entire training of 4 days. So on that note, I would thank Major Ranjeet and Rahul Sharma for your valuable time and inputs, and we all are very excited. I myself is definitely going to be a part of this training, and like we said, that not just limited to a security or just one domain, but I think some of these elements are really important and going to help you not just in your corporate world, but in your daily life as well. Things, how you can change your mindset, the way that you, when you see things happening around you. So that's really important for people to understand and to know. So once again, thank you so much for your time, and we look forward on to get more people registering and enrolling, and we'll see you on 2nd of April.
Then look forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much.